She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. Fragile skull. I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know. And she's got me living in a chemical oven.
Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another coffee and crime time. Today we are covering a highly requested newer case that once again I put off talking about, not only because we were in the middle of a 3-part series, but because I knew that there was going to be a lot more coming out in the early days of the investigation. So I wanted to wait in order to put together a more thorough and comprehensive video for you, one that I hoped would show a more complete picture and make more sense. Now, I'm sure there will be more coming out. There has to be. But as of now, I think we know enough to start a conversation about what might have happened to this young woman. Before we dive in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. And HelloFresh is a new sponsor, and I'm so excited to have them sponsoring this video. I love HelloFresh. I've been using them for a long time. The first time I ever signed up for a meal service was back when COVID lockdowns first started, because we would go to the grocery store and there would be nothing on the shelves. It truly terrified me to think that, there'd come a point where I wouldn't be able to have food in our refrigerator to feed the kids. And you know me, I'm a little paranoid, maybe a tad bit dramatic from time to time, but it was really bad there for a while. You couldn't find basic things like chicken in the store. Since then, HelloFresh has become so much more to me than just a meal delivery service. With HelloFresh, you can get mouth-watering, delicious, seasonal recipes with fresh, pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your front door. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit, and they are truly making cooking at home not only easy, but fun. I barely leave the house these days because I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home, and I don't want to take my chances with my compromised immune system. And with HelloFresh, there's no more stressful trips to the grocery store, and I don't even have to spend time and energy planning what I'm going to make for dinner. My work days usually consist of waking up, making coffee, and then getting right to work, whether it be researching, recording, editing, sometimes usually all three. And there are those days, at least 2 or 3 times a week. I only have a couple of hours between finishing up work for YouTube and then going back into the sound booth to record for the podcast, Crime Weekly. Now, on those days, HelloFresh comes in clutch. No thought needed, and not a lot of time needed either. The meals are already planned for you, the ingredients are already measured for you, and within no time, you have a hot, healthy, and delicious meal on the table. There's something for everyone, including vegetarian options, low-calorie options, family-friendly options. You are also guaranteed to get fresh produce and ingredients since the stuff's not sitting at a grocery store waiting for you to buy it. It's just sent directly to you. Sriracha.
Yo, look how cute.
Look at it. I like that they actually send you some ginger. Like, that's enough ginger for a while.
I love ginger, and we never have enough ginger.
HelloFresh not only saves time, but it saves you money. I know some people might be watching this and thinking, this sounds like a luxury I can't afford right now, but you can save up to 28% by using HelloFresh as opposed to grocery store shopping. The boxes show up at your door in packaging that's made almost entirely from recyclable and or recycled content, and the food is kept cold inside so you don't have to worry about anything arriving to you spoiled. On top of all of this, HelloFresh is flexible to your needs and tastes. Since you're the customer, you have the control over what meals you choose. You can add extra proteins or meal complements like HelloFresh's unbelievably delicious garlic bread. You can also easily change your delivery dates or skip a week, whatever you need. Now you can join me in making mealtime in your house more easy and fun by clicking the link in the description box and using code stephanieharlowe80 for a total of $80 off across 5 boxes, as well as free shipping on your first box. You can get your whole family in on the fun too. My husband and I love cooking together normally, and with HelloFresh, he's been having so much fun. Just the other night, he told me that using HelloFresh has really helped hone his cooking technique because he's always loved to cook, but this takes away all the prep, like cutting vegetables, measuring ingredients, and it really lets you focus on preparing the food perfectly, like a real chef.
Bake.
No, we're gonna do a roast.
Roast?
425.
What do you mean?
You're doing convection.
Oh, okay.
So you're gonna do, you're roasting your vegetables, you're not baking them. Baking is dry heat.
Oh, and roasting is moist heat.
I played the fifth because I don't know and I don't want to sound stupid. Make sure that you wash your hands. We have to wash your hands first.
I will wash my hands.
Okay. Gotta make sure that you get the tops and the bottoms in and you don't touch your face, or your ears, or your teeth, or your mouth, or your butt.
Or your nose.
So remember, click the link in the description box or go to HelloFresh.com and use code stephanieharlowe80 to get a total of $80 off across 5 boxes and free shipping on the first box. And make sure you send me pictures of your food once you've made it because I really want to see. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video and making cooking easy and fun. And let's dive into this case. And I feel like I'm going to get called out in the comment section of this video because I'm always the first one to say we can't and shouldn't judge someone based on the way they behave when they lose someone close to them. So, I mean, yeah, you guys can judge if you want. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying we shouldn't. In fact, I say it so much, it's probably obnoxious. And I obviously still feel this way, and I stand by that sentiment. But I am going to do a little speculating here, just because of the evidence and the red flags that I personally perceive to be there. You can absolutely let me know if you see things differently, if you see them the same, if you have different interpretations of the evidence. I would love to discuss it with everyone in the comments because, I mean, I could go either way on this one. Alexis Sharkey has been all over the media at this point, and they refer to her as an influencer. Now, there's conflicting statements about how Alexis herself felt about this label. I believe some members of her family, specifically her sister, comes to mind. Her sister said she hated being called an influencer, but one of her friends said Alexis really enjoyed being an influencer. And there's no doubt, based on what she did for a living and her presence on social media, she definitely was an influencer because she influenced people, but that doesn't have to have a negative connotation if the influence you have is positive. And I think Alexis did spread a lot of positivity and love and, good messaging on her social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. But you have this young woman, she was 26, she's, beautiful, vivacious, and very public. So when she went missing, the story definitely made headlines. These are the stories that do often make headlines. And let's start from the beginning of this story, the sad story, because it does not have a happy ending. Alexis grew up in a small town in northwestern Pennsylvania. Her parents are Mike and Stacy Robinall, and she has 2 sisters. She studied biology education at the University of Pittsburgh, and she even considered attending medical school for a while, but instead she ended up moving south where she worked at a bar for a while and traveled around a lot from town to town. She really enjoyed traveling, seeing new places, adding new experiences to her memories, recording herself vlogging while she's doing this. She did seem to really enjoy life and want to live it to its fullest. Now, she currently has over 70,000 followers on Instagram, I believe. But before she went missing, she only had about 20,000. And looking at her profile tells us some things about her life. She seemed to be really into living healthy, choosing organic whenever possible, and apparently that went for both her diet and her beauty products, things she put on her skin, hair, and her body. Her profile lists her profession as a mentor for a company called Monat, I believe, or Monet. I should probably know how to pronounce that before I record this video. Hold on.
Attention, Monat fine hair.
Monat. Okay. So I don't think I said it right. Either way, it's Monat, which It doesn't make sense because there's no E on the end of it. It's M-O-N-A-T, which to me is Monat, but it's Monate. And yes, before we get all excited, this company is considered to be an MLM. And believe me, I know how we all feel about MLMs. They're bad news bears. I get it. I'm with you. But I don't want us to automatically start judging Alexis for this. She's a victim. She's no longer with us, so I just don't see it as productive. But I've personally never heard of the products or used them, so I can't speak on whether they work or not. But it looks like Monat sells products for both hair and skin, and they've been investigated by the Florida Attorney General after hundreds of people began claiming that the products were causing hair loss. Now, the company was permanently banned from using false or misleading statements in the marketing and sales of its products. Like, shouldn't all companies be permanently banned from doing that, or do we just go on a case-by-case basis? Okay, but it's definitely a controversial company. They also do this thing where they send their salespeople, or mentors, as they're called, on these glamorous, all-expense-paid vacations. Alexis has a video on YouTube called Monat Passport Cancun 2019. And you can see the lifestyle that I believe these women were expected to sell and promote. Beautiful girls in bikinis, sipping on, frozen drinks, frolicking on white sand beaches and in bright blue waves. I mean, going on almost a year of quarantine and feeling wistful for the days of vacations. I was about ready to sign up. I'm joking, but you know what I mean. Now, Alexis's mother, Stacy, said she was surprised when Alexis began working with Monat in 2018 because in high school, Alexis was never interested in taking part in school fundraisers, where you have to sell like anything and everything to every single family member and your neighbors. Candy bars, wrapping paper, cookies, etc. Alexis had never wanted to do that stuff. She always made her little sister sell them for her. But Stacy, Alexis's mother, says that Alexis truly enjoyed being a part of the Monat family, and she had researched the products thoroughly before deciding to sell them. And it turned out Alexis was very successful in this endeavor, and she rose very quickly in the ranks. And yes, of course, part of her job was to recruit others to join her downline. That's part of the deal. That's an MLM. And in September of 2019, Alexis posted on Instagram telling her followers that they could sell Monat as a side hustle, and she urged them to join her for an informational call to learn more. This is standard procedure with MLMs. So she certainly considered herself more of a businesswoman than an influencer, but obviously her influencer status didn't hurt her potential at building her business, right? We can all admit that. In December of 2019, Alexis married a man named Tom Sharkey, who was 23 years her senior. He was originally from Fort Myers, Florida, but as far as what he did for a living or, what kind of person he is, there's really not much out there that's concrete. I will tell you, my first impression of Tom Sharkey was through the way Alexis portrayed him on her social media. He seemed like a gentle giant to me. There's a vlog that Alexis posted on YouTube when she and Tom were on a road trip in May of 2019, and they have this little cat that she apparently sometimes would keep on a leash. And in some clips, Tom's driving the car, and this little cat is crawling all over him. And the steering wheel, the cat's crawling everywhere, and Tom seems completely unbothered by it. There's a lot of clips of Alexis being picked up by Tom or running and jumping into his arms where he catches her and raises her up in the air, really easily. It's clear that Tom has a lot of physical strength, and I feel like he could have lifted little tiny Alexis with his pinky finger if he really wanted to. But overall, through Alexis's social media, they seemed to be a really happy and compatible couple. They didn't have any children, they traveled a lot, and they genuinely seemed to have fun with each other and enjoy each other's company. But as we know, what we see on social media is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Very few people post the bad times, the arguments, the sadness, but no relationship is without its downswings. No relationship is without its arguments and some sadness. And I'm assuming Tom and Alexis's relationship was no exception to that. Alexis and Tom lived in Colorado for a little while, and then they moved to Houston, Texas in January of 2020. And where our story starts is the Wednesday before this past Thanksgiving, 2020. On this day, Alexis spoke to her mother, who still lived in Pennsylvania with the rest of Alexis's family. They chatted for a little while, and they were making plans to get together for Christmas that year, since apparently they had not physically seen each other like in person since the previous Christmas, the same month that Alexis and Tom had gotten married. Now, of course, we know 2020 was the year of COVID, never-ending quarantine, travel bans, travel restrictions, so this doesn't surprise me too much. It was a year unlike any other. There just wouldn't have been much of an opportunity to fly from Texas to Pennsylvania or vice versa. The next day, Thanksgiving, is a little more confusing. Tom Sharkey gave a phone interview with a Houston reporter named Steve Campion, and during this call, he claimed he and his wife shared a Thanksgiving meal together Thursday morning, which is odd to me because they would not be spending much of that day together, actually Thanksgiving Day. And this technically would have been their first Thanksgiving as a married couple. Also, what kind of Thanksgiving meal are you having in the morning, I guess I would ask? Like, you're definitely not having turkey unless you cooked it the night before, and I just don't see why you would want to eat turkey Thanksgiving morning. You know, the whole thing about Thanksgiving is you smell the turkey cooking all day and you build up this anticipation. That hasn't really been explained, why they decided to have a Thanksgiving meal Thursday morning. I mean, it could have just been breakfast, and he said it was a Thanksgiving meal because technically if it was breakfast on Thanksgiving, it's still a Thanksgiving meal. Once again, this hasn't really been clarified, but what has been clarified is Alexis was going to be spending the rest of the day with her friend Tanya Ricardo and Tanya's family. Tanya met Alexis within just a few weeks of Alexis moving to Houston through an app called Bumble BFF, which according to their website is a place you can find connections, whether you're looking for a new friend in your area, a workout buddy, or even just a roommate. But these are supposed to be like platonic connections, so it's not a dating app. It's just literally if you're looking for a friend. So Alexis had most likely logged onto this app when she was new in town looking for friends in the area because unlike me, who wants as few friends as possible because I just don't have the time or energy for that right now, Alexis wanted to meet new people and, she wanted friends. She really enjoyed having a friend group and female companionship.
I was kind of looking for a new group of friends, and I brought this group of friends together, and she showed up to this dinner. And since that day, I mean, she's just been part of our circle.
It seems that Tanya introduced Alexis to other young women in the area, and over time they formed a really close group of about 7 girls who all talked often in a group chat and spent time together. Tanya said Alexis was a really happy, outgoing person. She was always really positive and upbeat and eager to share tips and tricks with other people, whether it be about, eating clean, living healthy, skincare, makeup, etc.
She was always happy, always had a smile on her face. A lot of people looked up to her. She was just very, very positive, always very knowledgeable, knew a lot about what was going on, loved being an influencer, as you can see, and sharing, tips and tricks about makeup and hair and fashion. If we needed her for anything to do with that, she was the girl to go to, for sure.
So Alexis does not spend Thanksgiving with her husband Tom, but with her friend Tanya, which isn't too suspicious or alarming all on its own. Maybe Tom had other plans. Maybe they were sick of being stuck with each other during quarantine. Who knows? There could be a million reasons, and it could be completely unimportant and non-nefarious.
She was actually at my house on Thanksgiving. We spent Thanksgiving together with my family.
The next day, however, was Friday, Black Friday, and this was the day that Alexis lost contact with her friends and stopped posting on social media, which is obviously strange because her job would have meant, constantly posting, being visible, being social. And we saw this with the Shanann Watts case as well. As soon as Shanann's friends couldn't get a hold of her, they knew something was wrong because Shanann always had her phone on and with her since she needed to use it for her job. Now that Friday, Alexis and her friends had been talking via text about their plans for the next day, Saturday. It was supposed to be rainy and gloomy, so they were planning a cozy day indoors, watching movies together. The last time Tanya talked to Alexis was at about 6 p.m. Friday.
And the last time I spoke to her was Friday around 6 o'clock was when my last text message was sent to her. The last conversation I had with her, she was asking me what I was doing Friday night. And I said, well, my mom's in town from Mexico, so I'm going to stay home with her. And then we said, okay, love you, whatever. And that was it.
Alexis's other friends, who she would usually be in contact with, also gave 6 p.m. as around the time when they stopped hearing from her. Now, let's go to Tom Sharkey's timeline of that night. So far, he hasn't given many details about what they were doing, what they were talking about, etc., but it had been reported that Alexis's mother, Stacy, had said Alexis left her apartment Friday evening after an argument of some kind, even though it's never specified who that argument was with. Tom Sharkey told Steve Campion that there had been no argument with him. He also suggested that Alexis had been drinking, and he'd told her he didn't want her to drive. Tom said, quote, "She understood me. I understood her. We didn't fight when she left. I just told her she couldn't drive under the influence. She left anyhow. This is where we're at." End quote. Okay, so let's pause. I'm trying to go over this in my head, how this conversation would have gone. Where did Alexis want to go? Did she have a specific place she was planning on going to? If so, Tom hasn't said. So it makes sense that maybe they were arguing or at least having a disagreement of some kind, and Alexis wanted to leave, to get away, at which point Tom told her, no, not if you're planning on driving under the influence after drinking. It's here that I can't see there being no argument at all. I mean, we've all been there, right, with friends or someone who's been drinking and wants to drive. And if you tell them that they can't, they usually aren't, super happy about it. They're usually not very accepting of that. There's usually some kind of pushback because they aren't being completely rational to begin with if they've been drinking and they still feel like they can drive. But okay, let's also ask a question here. As her husband, didn't Tom want to know where she was going so that he could make sure she arrived safely, especially if they weren't arguing when she left, as he claims? Why didn't he offer to drive her where she wanted to go or call her an Uber or a Lyft? I know my own husband, even if we were fighting and we were angry with each other, he would have let me leave because he would know he couldn't technically stop me, but he would have hopped into his car and followed me to make sure I didn't run into trouble or hurt myself. And when I say he would have let me leave, I'm not saying he would have let me drive drunk. I'm saying if I insisted on leaving after he told me I couldn't drive and I left on foot, he would have gotten into a car and followed me and made sure that I was okay. Because if someone's too drunk to drive, they probably shouldn't be wandering the streets alone either. But once again, that's just my perspective from my experiences. Maybe Alexis and Tom had a different kind of relationship. The next day, Saturday, Tanya woke up early and she sent a text to the group chat that Alexis was part of saying, who's ready to spend the day watching movies? Let's go, girls, that kind of thing. Tanya claims that Alexis would normally have been the first person to respond, and Alexis was also never the type of person to make plans and bail. And I know what she means by this. I know what Tanya means by this because I am most certainly the type of person to make plans and bail. When I make the plan, I have the best intentions of following through. But then the day comes and I'm busy or tired or I just feel like staying in and I back out. So my friends would not come looking for me. If I had said I was going to come over and watch movies and then I just didn't show up or answer texts, they'd be like, Stephanie's ignoring our text because she felt like staying home today. So that's just what she's doing. But Alexis was not like this at all. If she said she would be there, she would be there. But Alexis never responded to this message or any of the others that she was sent that day from anyone. So her friends obviously were worried and they went over to the apartment that Alexis shared with her husband, Tom, and they knocked on the door and they rang the doorbell, but no one answered, not even Tom.
And is she ever is it like her to not have her cell phone with her or
No.
any of the, have you talked to oh my gosh, this was not there. This is not there. This was
No, she is attached to her phone. She is a social media queen. She's an influencer. She works from her phone. Like I said, if I was in trouble, she would be the first person I would call. And we called and called and called and called, and her phone was on, and her messages were being sent, but not being read because she had her read receipts on. And then until yesterday is when her phone was shut off by whoever has it, or, you know, maybe it was thrown somewhere and it finally died. But I mean, when we realized that her social media was not active for over 12 hours, you're like, okay, this is not right. I went to her apartment, knocked on her door, you know, I did all that because I lived the closest. And so after a while I was contemplating, should I call her mom? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to worry her because she's far, far away.
Right.
And finally, after a while of just sitting in my car outside of her apartment, I said, I have to call her because I'm a mom. I would want to know.
Where was Tom this Saturday morning? Was he at home in the apartment just sleeping and he didn't hear the knocking and the doorbell ringing? Was he out getting coffee? Was he out looking for Alexis? This is still unclear to me. Anyways, when they didn't get an answer, her friends actually stayed there outside Alexis's apartment for a few hours, but they claim no one ever showed up or came to the door. At 8:30 this same morning, Saturday, a City of Houston Public Works employee was driving his sanitation route when he saw feet sticking out from under some bushes on the side of the road in the 1000 block of Red Haw near the Katy Freeway and Eldridge Parkway. He called his supervisor, John Richardson, and told John, I saw something. I think it might have been a mannequin, but I'm not really sure, and I feel like it should be checked out. It was not a mannequin, but the body of a completely nude woman who was just, laying on the side of the road under these bushes, deceased, but had no visible wounds on her body. It was Alexis Sharkey.
For John Richardson, it's a Saturday morning he'll never forget.
It plays back in my head. It's been playing back in my head every day.
He was at work for the City of Houston Solid Waste when Richardson says he got a call from an employee.
He said he thought he seen a body or a mannequin, so he wasn't for sure. He wasn't going to stop because he was kind of, he was scared or whatever case may be. So he asked me to come out there and check it out.
So as his supervisor, Richardson went to check it out and still can't believe what they found.
As we was driving, we could see the feet, so we got out and looked, and there it was. She was laying there, deceased. She was no clothes on, and I just got on the phone and I called 911.
She was brought to the Harris County ME's office and considered a Jane Doe since she didn't match the description of any known missing persons and she had no identification on or near her body. So as her friends are worried about her and looking for her, Alexis is already dead, discovered and considered to be unidentified. Authorities believe that her body had been left there overnight, which means she had died Friday night. At some point, probably shortly after she left her apartment, which was only 8 miles away from where she was found. Just a 3-minute drive. Now, at some point on Saturday, Alexis's friends do find Tom, and it's kind of unclear of how they end up running into him and being able to talk to him finally, but he claims that he hadn't seen his wife since the night before, Friday night, when she left the house on foot. Tanya Ricardo, Alexis's friend, does not think that Alexis would have left her apartment on foot. And Tanya doesn't even know what Alexis would have been doing or where she would have been going if she did. Tanya believes that Alexis would have called one of her many friends and asked for a ride, or at the very least called an Uber or a Lyft to bring her where she needed to go, wherever that was.
I don't know who could have done something like this to her. We were her friends. She wasn't one to have a lot of group of friends. If she needed something, if she needed someone to come pick her up or take her somewhere, or if she was going to get in the car and go somewhere, it would have been to my house or the 7 other girls that she was close with.
And none of you all are in walking distance to her?
No.
So she would have, you really do believe she would have called you and said, come pick me up?
She would have called us or taken an Uber or something. I mean, she wouldn't have walked anywhere.
Now, Where is Alexis's phone? That's not altogether clear. I think it's pretty obvious it wasn't found with her body, but did she have it on her when she left, or did she leave it at home? Tom told Steve Campion that he's been cooperating with homicide detectives and he's turned over all of his wife's messages, emails, and phone calls. But does that mean he was in possession of her phone? If so, I think that it might be another red flag, because I can't imagine that Alexis would leave her apartment on foot without her cell phone, unless she had way too much to drink and she just forgot it, which is possible, I guess. That evening, which was Saturday evening, the day after she goes missing, probably about roughly 24 hours after she just hasn't been seen, Tom and one of Alexis's friends, who I assume was Tanya, they called Stacy Robinall, which was Alexis's mother, to let her know that no one had seen or heard from Alexis since the previous day. And it was Alexis's mother who notified the Houston Police Department that her daughter was missing and began posting about it on social media, telling everyone to be on the lookout. So here is my other question. Tom Sharkey lets his wife leave their apartment on foot after she'd been drinking. There was allegedly no argument. They're on completely good terms, but she never came home that night. And this didn't ring any alarm bells for him. Well, Stephanie, he might have been asleep. Maybe he just fell asleep and he didn't notice that she didn't come home. Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. But when he woke up the next morning and his wife wasn't in bed next to him, did this not ring any alarm bells? And let's say he tried to contact her. He began calling and texting her to find out where she was and she never answers. Is this not something that worried him? Alexis's friends went to her apartment Saturday morning, so obviously Tom wasn't calling them that morning to find out if they knew where Alexis was, because if he had, then they wouldn't have shown up at her apartment looking for her. Did Alexis make a habit of leaving the apartment overnight and not checking in? Did Tom not bother to call or text because she'd left her phone at home? If that was the case, why wouldn't he be calling her friends to see if she was with them and, put his mind at ease? So Saturday passes with everyone still thinking that Alexis is just missing. But the next day, Sunday, Tom Sharkey takes it upon himself to go to the Harris County Medical Examiner's office after he sees a news report that a woman was found dead on the side of the road. Let me be clear. No one from the ME's office called Tom and said, "We think we might have your wife here. We have an unidentified woman. We see your wife's missing. We think that they are one and the same." This did not happen. He saw the report on television and thought, why don't I go down there and see if this dead woman is my wife? I want to be very clear right now. Tom Sharkey is innocent until proven guilty. As of now, he's just a widowed husband who, if he had nothing to do with this, is most likely experiencing a great deal of pain. But I think we can all admit that given what we know, some things just don't really add up. They don't really make sense. There's a lot of holes here that haven't been filled in yet. And we also know that when a woman turns up dead, it is very often at the hands of a partner or an ex. I believe the number is something like 2 out of 5 female murder victims are killed by an intimate partner. Those are just the facts, right? And it gets worse. After Alexis was identified, her friends and family began to talk to the media. Some of them claimed that Alexis had recently been unhappy in her marriage and she'd been thinking about getting a divorce. Now, this is something that Tom Sharkey denies outright. He said that he and Alexis were happy and had never talked about divorce at all, but he also described his wife differently than every single other person who knew her. Everyone else said Alexis was happy, positive, a glowing force in their lives, but Tom begged to differ, saying, quote, "She wasn't happy, she was stressed. I would cuddle her to try and make her strong. She was an amazing woman, sir. My wife was an amazing woman. She really was. There's always other sides to everything. I was the one holding her, cuddling her, and building her back up. I don't need to set the record straight. I'll let it play out the way it is. I know what my life was with my wife." End quote. And this is absolutely true. When I'm having a bad day or I'm stressed, I don't typically share that side of me on social media because I know everyone else is going through the gigs as well. Everyone else has their own stuff to deal with, and I'm not trying to burden anyone with my stuff. And if anyone sees me at my worst, it is my husband, who has often stepped in to cuddle me and build me back up on my bad days. So I believe that it could certainly be true that Alexis was not always the bright and bubbly woman that she showed the world on social media. No one is always happy. That's a given. This is not in dispute. There's no way Alexis 100% of the time, 365, was just happy and positive and had no bad days. But get this, just a month before she died, friends of Alexis alleged that she told them she was definitely talking about, getting a divorce, claiming that her husband had gotten physical with her. According to these friends, Tom choked Alexis so much that she blacked out and woke up later on the bathroom floor, and Alexis told them that she was afraid for her life. Once again, Tom denies that he was ever physically abusive to his wife. Alexis's mother, Stacy, has made a statement kind of concerning this, saying, quote, "There's been all sorts of talk about problems. She never shared those with me. Doesn't mean she did or didn't have them. Whenever they were with us, be it at home or wherever, we had a great deal of fun with them and we enjoyed being with them," end quote. But also, remember, Alexis and Tom hadn't spent a lot of time in person with her family for the better part of a year. And things can change. I know personally, also, if I'm having problems in a relationship, I tend to not share that with my family because if things work out and I'm, still with the guy later, I don't want my family to hate him, especially my parents. But I might share what was happening in my relationship with girlfriends. So we have a few people who've publicly stated there were problems in the marriage. A friend of Alexis's named Lauren Brew said, quote, "I'm going to be honest, she confided in me about how worried she was for her safety when we went to Marfa, Texas almost a month ago. We were sitting down to dinner and she lost it. We walked back to our hotel room and she confided in me that night." End quote. Additionally, we have the boyfriend of one of Alexis's friends, Chelsea Turnbow. Chelsea claims that the night Alexis went missing, Tom Sharkey texted her boyfriend, John. And at 11 p.m., John called Tom and he was like, what's going on? What's up? And Tom said, quote, "Me and Lex got into an argument and she left. I don't know where she went. Can you please let me know if you know anything?" End quote. So there's that. An admittance of an argument, if Chelsea and her boyfriend John are being honest. So why would he later deny there'd been one? I mean, trying to be fair, it could definitely be because Alexis would later encounter foul play that night, and Tom would understand that he'd already be a prime suspect, even without this argument taking place. So if you admit that there was an argument, you're even more of a suspect, but dishonesty this early into the investigation, it's not a good sign. Because if your wife's missing, you want to really just be honest. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything. This helps the investigation. Because if you're not being honest, then, maybe they're looking at you as a suspect. They find out you're lying, and then they keep looking into you. They're wasting time and resources looking into you when you could have just been upfront about everything to begin with. They could have, looked into you. You were an open book. You gave them your alibi. You showed them where you were, et cetera, and then they can move on to other things. But when you're being dishonest so early into an investigation, it makes me ask the question, aren't you worried about what actually happened being discovered? Don't you want the person who did this, if it wasn't you, to be found? And if that's what you want, then you need to be completely honest up front. Now, there is one thing that Alexis's friends and family all believe, that this was not an accident. Alexis was murdered. There's no other reason she would have been found the way she did, naked and tossed on the side of the road just 8 miles from her apartment. As of recording this video, there has been no cause of death that's been made public, but an autopsy is being done most likely as we speak, and investigators are already trying to put the pieces together. They most likely will start with the electronic devices of both Alexis and possible suspects, or people that she interacted with quite a bit in the days leading up to her disappearance and her eventual death. Former federal prosecutor Bill Johnson said, quote, "Forensic electronics would be the early part of it because it often leads to good evidence, and it's also somewhat time sensitive. Sometimes it's harder to get that history from electronics and from service providers with time, so you kind of need to move pretty quickly on that," end quote, which means they're going to start with the cell phones and GPS and things like that, the things that in 2020 are usually what solves a case, in my opinion. Now, Mark Garagos, who is most well known for representing Scott Peterson, thinks it's too early to jump to conclusions. And while I agree with that sentiment, I think it's pretty hilarious coming from Scott Peterson's lawyer. It almost makes me wonder if he's out here, like ambulance chasing kind of, looking for his next big high-profile client to just put him back in the limelight, because what's he really done, since Scott Peterson that we've heard about? But that's just my opinion. Don't come for me. There's another angle to this, though. I didn't just look at Alexis's most obvious social media platforms like Instagram and YouTube. These are obviously the most influencer-friendly platforms, but I find people are more themselves and more honest on Facebook because this isn't, usually a platform that you use as an influencer, or as an influencer, you have like a separate page for Facebook that, your followers can follow you on, but then you have one that just like your family and friends in real life see. Now, on Alexis's Facebook page, her real life one, she expressed some controversial opinions, to say the least. She's clearly right-leaning politically, or at least I can say that she wasn't a huge fan of Joe Biden. Like, I don't know what her political affiliations were. I don't pretend to know. But she was not a fan of Joe Biden running for president. And she also made some suggestions that maybe COVID wasn't as bad as it was being made out to be. Now, please try to not start political debates in the comment section unless they're going to be healthy and happy and everybody kind of like hears everyone else out, because that's not the purpose for me bringing this up. I do not want to start a political debate in the comment section. Me personally, I'm very libertarian, which means I don't care what you do or what you believe as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. I'm very pro-speech, and I believe that as adults, people have the right to voice their opinions. They have the right, and they should engage in debates and conversations, even if I don't agree with them. In fact, I really enjoy talking to people who have opposing viewpoints to me, because otherwise, if I don't do that, I'm just living in an echo chamber, and that's not healthy either. And no matter what assertions another person makes, I also know that I always have the option and the free will to do my own research and decide for myself what I want to believe. So somebody stating an opinion that's false or unpopular, it doesn't affect me in the way that it seems to affect so many people nowadays. I'm not like, don't talk, you're dangerous, because it's like we're adults. We have the ability to look for ourselves and see if what this person is saying is true. And we should do that anyways. Like, we shouldn't just be going on Facebook, hearing people who have the same beliefs as us and just, like I said, sitting in that echo chamber and never stepping outside of it. So as adult people, we always have the option to research for ourselves and decide what we want to believe based on, whatever research we come across. Lately, though, on social media, I have to feel that I'm in the minority in this belief system. I've seen people be mean to each other on social media before for years, of course, but never to the extent that I see it happening now. Just the other day, I was on my neighborhood Facebook page, and I never talk on the page. I just lurk and I see what's going down. And sometimes I do enjoy watching people bicker about stupid things like who let whose dog out and why isn't your dog on a leash and things like that. Well, this one guy asked a question. He posted saying why is this Starbucks closed? A pretty innocent question. And he was inundated with hate comments. And one of them said, "We are in a global pandemic and all you care about is bad coffee? What's wrong with you? People are dying." I swear, the way I said it, the yelling, he used all caps, this person who responded, lots of exclamation points, lots of question marks. Just a ridiculous reaction to somebody saying, why is the Starbucks closed? Then some other lady said, oh, it's because Starbucks sucks and they're overpriced and no one has the money to spend on Starbucks coffee. And then somebody responded to her and was like, yeah, I'm not a fan of Starbucks either, but they always have lines out the door or to the street, so I don't think that's it. And this lady responds, yeah, I guess you're right. Just people with nothing better to do than spend their money on overpriced coffee. And I'm over here damn, lady, who pissed in your non-Starbucks coffee this morning, right? What? Everyone has the right to like what they like, but, we still need to put money into the economy. We still want people to be able to have jobs, which Starbucks provides. Since when did people become incapable of seeing something that they didn't agree with, acknowledging it in their head, I don't agree with this, and then moving on? And not even that, this guy with the Starbucks, he's just asking, why is it closed? He just wants to know, why is it closed? Probably he wanted to know if they had a COVID outbreak, completely innocent question, 5 words. And people just lost their damn minds. People have lost their damn minds lately. When did just being nice to people go out of fashion? And of course, I was then compelled to say something along the lines of get a hobby, take up knitting, do word puzzles, whatever. And your mom should have taught you, don't say anything if you have nothing nice to say, because it's I never talk on these pages, but I just can't stand it lately. And I think people have to be reminded that they need to behave themselves, because that's ridiculous. Now, of course, they're allowed to be complete dicks to other people if they want to be, but at the same time, they're not free from being told, like, you're out of line and you're being rude, and there's no need for it. So that's what I did. Not all heroes wear capes. But I kind of went off track, and I told you this story to illustrate that tensions are high right now. A lot of people are on the verge of snapping. Tolerance is at an all-time low. And Alexis expressed opinions that at least the verbal majority of people do not hold. And many people consider her opinions to be dangerous or bad or wrong. So if it wasn't her husband, this is probably where I would start as a cop. Did she have any arguments with people, like in the comments section of these posts? Did anybody send her threats on Facebook Messenger? Like, if you keep talking like this, you're going to get people killed. You know, I'm going to come after you. I've seen this stuff happen, guys. I'm sure you have too. Like, all of you sitting here watching this, I'm sure you've seen people pop off and things escalate on Facebook to the point where, like, death threats are being exchanged. I'm sure you have, because I know I have more than once. Also, we have to remember Alexis was a public figure. She would have been recognizable. She may have even had a stalker, someone who followed her and watched her comings and goings. And if that's the case, they would have maybe been following her that night. They maybe would have seen her leave on her own on foot. And then they would have just pounced on their chance, you know, to finally, I don't know, strike, get her. I don't know what stalkers are thinking. Or it could have been just a random violent asshole who was driving by and grabbed his or her opportunity, a crime of opportunity. I mean, I think that these are all viable options, but we do have to look at the husband in this case. I don't want to say that he's done this. I hope he hasn't, because they did genuinely look like a happy couple. They looked like they really loved each other. And I want to believe in love. I love love, and I want to believe in love. And I have such a great marriage. And I know that my husband and I argue, and we have stupid arguments, and we have some serious arguments sometimes. But it doesn't mean that, you know, he's ever going to hurt me. I know that. So I wish that she'd had that relationship, you know, and it seemed like she genuinely thought that she did for a while. But why would her friends be saying that she was having issues with her husband and he was being physical with her and she was thinking of divorce if this wasn't true? That's what I can't wrap my head around. Like, what's the motive there? What's the motive to implicate a completely innocent person? Because, yeah, you can say maybe they're just trying to get attention, but you're not only, you know, getting attention, you're literally ruining somebody else's life. Why would they do that? And why would more than one of them do that? But I leave it to you, and I ask you the question. What do you think about all this? What's your theory? Keeping in mind, it's just a theory and not an accusation, so let's try not to word it that way, because I guess Tom's getting all kinds of threats and, you know, is having issues on social media, and I think he's made his Facebook private at this point. He was posting a lot of, I guess, strange posts right after it was found out that, you know, she was dead. Like, oh, Alexis, we used to say we'd grow old, and I said the one thing you'd beat me at was outliving me because you were so competitive, and, you know, cute things. Posting a picture of her in her wedding dress and saying, like, the most beautiful woman in the world. Cute things, yes, but also I don't know. I don't know if it was the right time for it, I guess. I don't want to sound judgy, but I asked my husband, I was like, if this happened to me, would you be posting these things on Facebook, like the day of finding out that I was dead, or the day after, or 2 days after? And he was like, absolutely not. I'd be distraught. I'm not thinking about posting stuff on social media. But like I said, that's just my husband, my relationship. My husband's not big on social media. Maybe Tom was. Maybe he was just feeling alone and he wanted some consolation from people. Who knows? I don't know. It did seem a little odd, though. The posts were weird, in my opinion. Don't come for me. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Make sure you like this video if you liked it. Make sure you share it if you think it's worth sharing. Also, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are already subscribed and you haven't been getting notified of my videos, make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube unsubscribes people from my channel all the time. Thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure to follow my social media handles in the description box. Subscribe to Crime Weekly, which is a podcast I co-host with Derek Levasseur, who's a retired police officer, also a former Big Brother winner. Stay kind, stay beautiful, and I do have a very interesting deep dive coming for you guys that's been highly requested since I've started on YouTube, so I'm excited to bring that to you. I will see you very soon. Bye. Don't break now. In about
going straight down. And that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings.